I am 79 years old. I have outlived my husband. I've outlived my parents. I have outlived people I loved and people I could not stand and people I barely knew. And I have outlived Clara. Clara was my best friend for 16 years. My business partner for 16 years. The only person on earth who knew me before any of this existed. And in April 1988, in a boardroom on the 11th floor, I took everything from her. She asked me one question. I never answered it. I want to tell you something before I go any further. I am not going to tell you I was a monster. I am not going to tell you I was justified. I am not going to give you the version of this story that makes you comfortable, either by making me the villain or making me the victim. I am going to tell you what happened as clearly and as honestly as I can from a hospital bed at 79 years old. And I'm going to let you decide what you think of it. Because here is the thing about the worst thing you have ever done. You did not do it because you were evil. You did it because in that moment, with what you knew and what you feared and what you needed, it felt like the only way. That is what makes it hard to talk about, and that is what makes it impossible to forget. Clara and I met when we were 7 years old. Her family moved in 3 houses down from mine. She knocked on our door one Saturday morning and asked if I wanted to ride bikes. I said yes. We were inseparable for the next 45 years. The first 16 together, the last 29 in silence. I want to tell you about both parts. Let me tell you who Clara actually was, not the version of her that lives in my guilt, the real person. Clara was the kind of person who remembered things, not facts, feelings. She remembered that you were nervous about a presentation 3 weeks ago, and she would ask you how it went. She remembered that you did not like cilantro, and that your mother's birthday was in October, and that you had a bad dream the night before something important. She collected people the way some people collect objects, carefully, permanently. She was also the reason IURE survived its first 4 years. I was the idea. Clara was the architecture. I would walk into a meeting and say we need to produce 400 units by March. Clara would have already drawn the timeline, identified the 3 suppliers, calculated the margin, and flagged the problem in week 7 before I had even finished the sentence. We were not the same. We were better than the same. You know how rare that is? Not a partnership, not a collaboration. Something rarer. Someone who makes you more than you are alone, and who you make more than they are alone, and who you both know it. That is what we had. And I treated it like a resource I could afford to spend. In late 1987, Ares was in serious trouble. We had expanded too fast into 3 new markets simultaneously. Cash flow was collapsing. We had 340 employees and payroll commitments we could not honor past February. I had found a solution, a group of investors willing to inject enough capital to stabilize everything. One condition. I need you to understand something about what I am about to tell you. I am not telling you this to explain what I did. I am telling you this so you understand the size of what I was holding. The condition was control. They wanted a restructured ownership. They wanted my stake consolidated. They wanted specifically for there to be one decision maker, not 2. They wanted Clara out, not out of the company, out of equity, out of control. She could stay. She could keep her title, her salary, her office. But her 40% ownership, The 40% she had earned, built, bled for, would be absorbed legally through a clause in our original partnership agreement that neither of us had ever expected to invoke. I had 3 days to decide. I spent all 3 of them telling myself I would find another way. I did not find another way, and what I did instead, and why I did it without telling her first, is the thing I have never been able to fully explain. Not to anyone, not to myself. April 14th, 1988. The meeting was at 9 in the morning. I arrived at 8:15. The lawyers were already there. The investors were already there. Clara arrived at 9:02. She walked in and looked at the room. She looked at the documents on the table. She looked at me. I do not know what she saw in my face. Whatever it was, she sat down without saying anything. She picked up the document in front of her and read it. She read the whole thing, every page, 11 pages. No one spoke. When she finished, she set it down. She aligned the edges with the table the way she always did with papers. Neat, precise, exactly Clara. Then she looked at me again. She said, "Why?" One word. Not "Why did you do this?" Not "How could you?" Not "I trusted you." Just "Why?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Not because I did not have an answer. I had 100 answers. The company, the employees, the only option, the timing, the investors. But standing in that room, looking at her face, at the face of someone who had known me since I was 7 years old, every one of those answers turned to dust in my mouth. The lawyers started talking. The meeting continued. The documents were signed. Clara stood up, picked up her bag, and walked out. She did not look at me again. You know what I did? I stayed in that room for another 40 minutes discussing the transition timeline, because that was easier than following her into the hallway. And I have been paying for those 40 minutes ever since. I tried to call her 3 times in the first month. She did not answer. I wrote her a letter in June of 1988. 4 pages. I spent 11 days writing it. She never responded. After a year, I stopped trying. I told myself she needed time, that eventually she would understand, that the company surviving was, in some way, also her survival, her 16 years of work preserved, the things she had built still standing. I told myself a lot of things. Here is what I know now, at 79, that I refused to know at 41. Silence is not neutral. When you wrong someone and they go quiet, that silence is not waiting. It is not healing. It is not forgiveness in progress. It is a door closing. And every day you do not walk through it, it closes a little more. Most of us wait until it is shut completely, and then we spend the rest of our lives on the wrong side of it. I heard about Clara through mutual acquaintances over the years. She started her own small atelier, did beautiful work, never scaled it, never tried to, seemed by all accounts to be content. She married in 1993. A man named Thomas, who had been a textile supplier we both knew. She had 1 daughter. I was not invited to the wedding. I found out about it 4 months later. I kept building It kept growing. And not one day of that growth felt the way it had felt when Clara was in the room. Not one. Clara died in January 2016. Cancer. She was 68 years old. I found out from someone who had worked for both of us, years apart. He sent me a message, 2 sentences. I want to tell you what I felt when I read it. Not grief, not guilt. Something underneath both of those. The specific weight of something that can never be resolved. not because time ran out. Time had been running out for 28 years, and I had kept telling myself there was more of it. Because she was gone, and the question she asked me in that boardroom was still unanswered. And now it would stay that way. You know what the cruelest part of losing someone you have wronged is. You do not lose the chance to fix it on the day they die. You lose it much earlier. Every day you wait. Every morning you wake up and think, not yet. By the time Clara died, I had already lost the chance 1,000 times. The death was just the moment I finally had to stop pretending otherwise. I am not going to tell you what to think about what I did. I told you I would not, and I meant it. What I am going to tell you is this. Real friendship, the kind where someone has known you long enough to see the difference between who you perform and who you are, is not common. Most people go through their entire lives without it. If you have it, you probably do not fully understand how rare it is. Not because you are ungrateful, because rarity is hard to see from inside it. There is someone in your life right now, maybe one person, maybe two, who knows you that way, who has been watching you long enough to have seen you at your worst and stayed anyway. Think about when you last told them you see what they do, that you know what it costs them, that you do not take it for granted. And if there is someone you have wronged, someone whose door is still open even a crack, I want you to think about what you are waiting for, not because they deserve an apology, because you are carrying something that is going to get heavier every single year. And one day the door will be closed, and you will be on the wrong side of it. And no amount of building will make that quieter. I am 79 years old. I have outlived Clara. She asked me one question. I still do not have an answer. Is there someone you failed? And have you ever, even once, admitted it?